The fluorescent lights above me flickered like dying stars, and through the haze of pain medication, I could hear my mother's voice cutting through the sterile air like a blade. "We will not sign those papers." My father stood beside her, his arms crossed, his face stone cold. And there I was, 19 years old, bleeding internally from a car accident that wasn't even my fault, watching the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally turn their backs on me when I needed them most. What kind of parents refuse to save their own child's life? If this story shocks you as much as it did me, please hit that like button and subscribe, because what happened next will make you question everything you think you know about family. And I need you to comment below and tell me if you think I made the right choice, because even now, months later, I'm still not sure. But let me start from the beginning, because this nightmare didn't start in that hospital room. It started 3 months earlier, on what should have been the happiest day of my life. 3 months earlier, the acceptance letter felt like fire in my hands. Stanford University, full scholarship, pre-med program, everything I had worked for since I was 12 years old, when I decided I wanted to be a doctor. Every late night studying, every sacrifice, every dream I had built in the quiet moments when nobody was watching, it was all there, printed on crisp white paper with the university's official seal. "Mom! Dad!" I burst through the front door of our modest 2-story house in suburban Ohio. The smell of my mother's famous pot roast filled the air, and I could hear the television playing in the living room where my father usually sat after his shifts at the factory. "You're not going to believe this." I found them in the kitchen. Mom was stirring something on the stove, her graying hair pulled back in the same bun she'd worn for as long as I could remember. Dad was sitting at the small wooden table, still in his work clothes, looking exhausted. They both looked up when I practically flew into the room, waving the letter like a victory flag. "I got in," I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. "Stanford accepted me. Full scholarship, Mom, full scholarship." The spoon in my mother's hand stopped moving. My father's tired eyes narrowed as he took in the letter I was holding. For a moment, the only sound was the bubbling of whatever was cooking on the stove. "Stanford?" Mom's voice was quiet, controlled. Too controlled. "That's in California, yes." I couldn't contain my excitement. "California? Can you believe it? I'm going to be a doctor, just like I always said. This is it, Mom. This is everything we talked about." But as I looked at their faces, my excitement began to curdle in my stomach like spoiled milk. My father stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the linoleum floor with a sound that made me wince. "California is 3,000 miles away," he said, his voice flat and cold. "I know. But 3,000 miles away from your family," my mother interrupted, finally turning to face me. Her eyes, usually warm and loving, looked like chips of ice. 3,000 miles away from your responsibilities here." Responsibilities. The word hit me like a slap. I knew what she meant, but I had hoped, prayed, that they would understand. That they would be proud. "Mom, this is Stanford. Do you know what this means? Do you know how hard it is to get in there? And they're paying for everything. Everything. This is my chance to become something, to help people, to abandon your family," my father finished. "To abandon everything we've sacrificed for you." The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in around me. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. In my dreams, they hugged me. They cried happy tears. They told me how proud they were. "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said, but my voice came out smaller than I intended. "I'll come back. I'll visit. And once I'm a doctor, I can help you guys. I can pay off the house, help with Danny's college fund." "Danny needs you here now," Mom said sharply. "Your brother has special needs, Amber. He depends on you." My 16-year-old brother Danny had been born with autism and mild intellectual disabilities. I loved him more than anything in the world, but I also knew that he was more capable than my parents gave him credit for. They treated him like he was made of glass, like he would shatter if I wasn't there to help him with his homework or drive him to his therapy appointments. "Danny will be fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "He's been making so much progress with his therapist. And you guys are amazing with him. You don't need me to We don't need you? My father's voice rose, and I could see the vein in his forehead that always appeared when he was really angry. After everything we've done for you? After we worked double shifts to pay for your SAT prep courses and your college applications? After we sacrificed our own dreams so you could chase yours? I never asked you to do that. The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. I worked 3 jobs in high school to pay for most of it myself. I earned this scholarship on my own merit. This isn't about what you sacrificed. This is about my future. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face had gone white, and my father looked like I had just stabbed him in the heart. Your future, Mom repeated slowly. What about our future? What about Danny's future? What about the family business? The family business. Dad's small auto repair shop that barely kept us afloat. The one he'd always dreamed I would take over and expand. The one I'd been helping with since I was old enough to hold a wrench. The one that had never, not once, been part of my plans. I don't want the auto shop, Dad. I've never wanted it. I want to be a doctor. Doctors don't come from families like ours, he said, his voice bitter. Doctors come from rich families with connections and trust funds. You're going to go out there, spend 4 years pretending to be something you're not, and then come crawling back here with a mountain of debt and a worthless degree. It's a full scholarship, I repeated, but the words felt hollow now. For undergrad, Mom said. What about medical school? What about the years of residency where you'll make nothing? How are you going to pay for all of that? I had thought about this, of course. I had plans. Loans, work-study programs, maybe more scholarships. It would be hard, but it was possible. Thousands of people did it every year. I'll figure it out, I said. I always do. No, my father said, his voice final. You'll stay here. You'll go to community college, study business, and help me build something real, something lasting, something for this family. I won't do it. The words came out stronger than I felt. I'm 18. You can't make me. You're 19, Mom corrected, and you're still our daughter. You're still part of this family, and family takes care of family. Family also supports each other's dreams, I shot back. My father laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dreams? You want to talk about dreams? I dreamed of playing professional baseball. Your mother dreamed of being a teacher. But we gave up those dreams to build a life, to take care of our responsibilities. That's what adults do, Amber. They grow up. So I'm supposed to give up my dreams so you can live vicariously through me and your auto shop? I was crying now, hot tears streaming down my face. I'm supposed to pretend I want the same small life you chose? The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. My mother's hand connected with my cheek with a sharp crack that echoed through the kitchen. For a moment, we all stood frozen, staring at each other. Don't you ever, she whispered, her voice shaking. Talk about our life like it's something to be ashamed of. Everything we have, everything we are, we built with our own hands. We may not have fancy degrees or big bank accounts, but we have each other. We have family, and family doesn't abandon family for some pipe dream. I touched my burning cheek, tasting blood where my teeth had cut into my lip. In that moment, looking at my parents' faces, my father's cold anger, my mother's desperate hurt, I realized that they would never understand. They would never support this. And if I wanted my dreams, I was going to have to choose between them and my family. I'm going, I said quietly. I'm sorry you can't be happy for me, but I'm going. If you walk out that door to chase this fantasy, my father said, his voice deadly calm, don't bother coming back. You won't be our daughter anymore. Frank, my mother whispered, but he held up a hand to silence her. I mean it, Amber. You choose Stanford, you choose to be alone. Don't call us when you fail. Don't come crawling back when reality hits. You'll be dead to us. The words hit me like physical blows. Dead to them. The 2 people who had raised me, who had loved me, who had been my whole world for 19 years. Dead to them. But even as my heart shattered, even as I felt like I was drowning in their disappointment and anger, I knew I couldn't give up. I couldn't spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. I couldn't let their fear become my cage. Then I guess I'm dead to you. I whispered. I walked out of that kitchen, up to my room, and started packing. Through the thin walls, I could hear my mother crying and my father's angry muttering. I could hear Danny asking what was wrong, and my mother's broken explanation that I was leaving them. That night, I cried myself to sleep clutching my acceptance letter. The next morning, I left for California with 2 suitcases and a broken heart. 2 months later, Stanford was everything I had dreamed it would be, and nothing like I had expected. The campus was gorgeous, sprawling and green with buildings that looked like something out of a movie. My dorm room was small but cozy, and my roommate Sarah was a pre-med student from New York who understood the pressure and the dreams that drove us. But the loneliness was crushing. I had expected to miss my family. I had expected it to be hard. What I hadn't expected was the complete and total silence. No calls, no texts, no emails. It was like I had never existed. I threw myself into my studies with desperate intensity. Organic chemistry, biology, physics, calculus. I attacked each class like my life depended on it. Because in a way it did. If I failed, if I couldn't make this work, then my parents would be right. I would have given up everything for nothing. My grades were perfect. I made the dean's list. I got a work-study job in the biology lab that paid enough for my basic expenses. On paper, I was succeeding beyond my wildest dreams. But at night, alone in my narrow dorm bed, I would stare at my phone and fight the urge to call home. I would wonder how Danny was doing, whether he missed me, whether my parents ever thought about their daughter who had chosen her dreams over their love. Sarah noticed, of course. She was too smart and too observant to miss my middle-of-the-night crying sessions or the way I flinched every time someone mentioned going home for the holidays. You could call them, she said one October evening as we studied in the library. It's been 2 months. Maybe they've cooled down. I shook my head. You don't know my parents. When they make a decision, they stick to it. I made my choice, and they made theirs. But you're miserable, she pointed out. I'm not miserable, I lied. I'm focused. She gave me a look that said she wasn't buying it, but she didn't push. Sarah was good that way. She understood that some wounds were too deep for casual friendship to heal. Halloween came and went. Thanksgiving approached, and while other students made plans to go home, I signed up to volunteer at a local shelter. I told myself it was because I wanted to help people. But really, I just couldn't bear the thought of sitting alone in my empty dorm. While everyone else was with their families, it was the night before Thanksgiving when everything changed. I was walking back to my dorm after a late study session in the library. The campus was quieter than usual, most students having already left for the holiday weekend. The air was crisp and cold, unusual for Northern California, and I pulled my jacket tighter around myself as I hurried across the quad. I never saw the car coming. One moment I was walking, thinking about the genetics assignment I needed to finish over the break, and the next moment I was flying through the air. The world spun in a nauseating whirl of lights and darkness before I hit the asphalt with a sickening thud. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I could taste blood in my mouth and feel warmth spreading across my face. Somewhere far away, I could hear screaming, and it took me a long moment to realize it was coming from me. Oh God, I didn't see her. A man's voice, panicked and shaking. Call 911! Someone call 911! Stay with me, sweetheart. A woman's voice closer, kneeling beside me. Don't try to move. Help is coming. I tried to speak, tried to tell them I was okay, but nothing came out except a wet, choking sound. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, and when I tried to breathe, it felt like knives in my chest. The ambulance seemed to take forever. The paramedics were efficient and gentle, but I could see the concern in their eyes as they worked on me. Broken ribs, possible internal bleeding, potential head injury. The words floated around me like butterflies I couldn't quite catch. Is there someone we can call? One of them asked as they loaded me into the ambulance. Parents? Family? I tried to shake my head, but even that small movement sent lightning bolts of pain through my skull. There was no one to call. I had made sure of that when I chose Stanford over family. The hospital. The emergency room at Stanford Hospital was a blur of bright lights, urgent voices, and machines that beeped and hummed around me. Doctors and nurses moved with practiced efficiency, poking and prodding, taking x-rays and blood samples, asking questions I could barely answer through the pain and medication. "We need to get her into surgery," I heard someone say. "The internal bleeding is getting worse. Surgery." The word sent a spike of panic through me that cut through even the morphine they had given me for pain. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone, and I needed surgery. "We need consent," another voice said. "She's over 18, but with the head injury, we should contact her parents." A young resident with kind eyes leaned over me. "Amber, can you hear me? We need to call your parents to let them know what's happening." "Can you give us their number?" I stared up at him, this stranger who wanted to help me, and felt fresh tears leak from the corners of my eyes. My parents. The people who had raised me and loved me and then cut me out of their lives like I was a cancer. The people who had said I was dead to them, but I was dying. Actually dying. The doctors weren't saying it in so many words, but I could see it in their faces, feel it in the way my body was shutting down despite their best efforts. If there was ever a time for my parents to forgive me, to remember that I was their daughter before I was their disappointment, it was now. With a shaking hand, I reached for the resident's arm and whispered my father's phone number. 20 minutes later, I watched through the glass window of my hospital room as my parents walked into the waiting area. They looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. My mother's hair had more gray in it, and my father's shoulders seemed permanently hunched now, like he was carrying an invisible weight. For a moment, when my mother's eyes met mine through the glass, I saw something flicker there: love, concern, the instinctive maternal reaction to seeing her child hurt and vulnerable. But then my father put his hand on her arm, and her face hardened again. The surgeon, Dr. Martinez, approached them with the consent forms in his hands. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see his gestures, see the urgency in his posture. He was explaining my injuries, the need for immediate surgery, the risks of waiting. I watched my parents listen, their faces stone-cold and unreadable. My mother kept glancing toward my room, but my father stared straight ahead, never once looking in my direction. Then Dr. Martinez held out the forms, and my parents stepped back. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read their lips. I could see my father's firm shake of the head, my mother's anguished expression as she looked between the doctor and me. "We will not sign those papers." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Through the glass, I watched the surgeon argue with them, watched him gesture emphatically toward my room. I watched my mother cover her face with her hands while my father stood rigid and unmovable beside her. They were letting me die. My own parents, the people who had brought me into this world, were going to let me leave it rather than put their signature on a piece of paper. Rather than admit that maybe, just maybe, I was still their daughter. Dr. Martinez came into my room, his face grave. "Amber, I'm sorry, but your parents are refusing to consent to the surgery. They're saying they need time to think, to pray about it, but—" He trailed off, clearly struggling with how to explain that my parents were willing to gamble with my life. "How long do I have?" I whispered. He looked uncomfortable. "Without the surgery? Hours, maybe less. The internal bleeding isn't stopping on its own. And we can't wait much longer. Hours. I had hours to live. And my parents were outside praying about whether I deserved to survive. That's when I heard the voice from the hallway. "Excuse me. Are you the doctor treating the young woman from the car accident?" A man's voice, unfamiliar, speaking to Dr. Martinez just outside my door. "Yes, but I can't discuss her case with you unless you're family," the doctor replied. "I understand. I'm the one who hit her." The words sent a chill through me. The driver, the person who had turned my world upside down, was here, in the hospital, talking to my doctor. "I know I have no right," the voice continued, "but I've been in the waiting room since she was brought in. I heard you talking to her parents, and I heard what they said. That girl is dying and they're refusing to sign for surgery? Sir, I really can't. I want to help." Whatever she needs, whatever it costs, I want to pay for it. And if there's any way, any legal way for me to consent to her treatment, I want to do that too. I struggled to sit up, ignoring the searing pain in my ribs, and looked toward the door. Through the gap, I could see part of a man's profile, middle-aged with graying hair and a face creased with worry and guilt. Dr. Martinez stepped into view. Mr. Henderson. Robert Henderson? And I know this sounds crazy, but that girl doesn't deserve to die because her parents are too stubborn to sign a piece of paper. There has to be something we can do. There was a long pause. Then Dr. Martinez said quietly, "She's 19, legally an adult. If she's conscious and coherent enough to consent to her own treatment? But you said she has a head injury. Mild concussion. She's been lucid and responsive. If she can sign for herself..." Another pause. "It's irregular, but it's legal." My heart started pounding. Or maybe it had been pounding all along and I was just now noticing it. I could consent to my own surgery? I didn't need my parents' permission or their blessing or their love. I could save my own life. Dr. Martinez came back into my room, followed by the man from the hallway. Up close, Robert Henderson looked like somebody's dad. Kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, worry lines etched deep around his mouth, hands that shook slightly as he clasped them in front of him. "Amber," Dr. Martinez said gently, "this is Mr. Henderson. He's the driver who..." "Well, he's the reason you're here." "But he's also offering to help." I looked at this stranger, this man who had nearly killed me and was now trying to save me, and then I looked through the glass at my parents. They were still there, still arguing with each other in hushed, angry whispers. "Can I really sign for myself?" I asked. "Yes. You're an adult and you're competent to make medical decisions. It's your choice, my choice." For the second time in 3 months, I was being forced to choose between my family and my future. Between what they wanted and what I needed to survive. But this time, the choice was literally life or death. "What's the surgery?" I asked. Dr. Martinez explained quickly. They needed to repair internal bleeding from my spleen and liver, set my broken ribs, and make sure there was no other damage they had missed. It was serious but not experimental. The kind of surgery that happened every day in trauma centers across the country. And if I don't have it, you'll die. Tonight, probably. I looked at Mr. Henderson, who was standing awkwardly by my bedside, his guilt and desperation written all over his face. "Why?" I asked him. "Why do you care what happens to me?" He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes focused on his hands. "I have a daughter," he said finally. "She's about your age. And if someone hurt her, if someone put her in the hospital, I'd want that person to do everything in their power to make it right." He looked up at me then, and I could see tears in his eyes. "I can't undo what I did to you. But I can try to fix it." Through the glass, I could see my father storming toward the exit, my mother trailing behind him with her head down. They were leaving. They were actually leaving me here to die, rather, than put their names on a consent form. I closed my eyes and made my choice. I'll sign. But as Dr. Martinez handed me the pen and Mr. Henderson squeezed my shoulder, with gentle encouragement, I couldn't help wondering, was I signing my own death warrant? Or was I finally, truly choosing to live? The pen felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my trembling hand. Each letter of my signature was a choice to live, a choice to trust a stranger over my own flesh and blood, a choice to save myself when the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had decided I wasn't worth saving. As I finished writing my name, I watched through the glass as my father grabbed my mother's arm and practically dragged her toward the hospital exit. She looked back once, her face crumpled with anguish, but she didn't stop walking. They disappeared around the corner, leaving me with a stranger who cared more about my survival than they did. "Thank you," Mr. Henderson whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You made the right choice." But as the nurses wheeled me toward the operating room, I wasn't sure if I had made the right choice, or if I had just signed away the last connection I had to my family forever. The surgery. I woke up in a haze of pain medication and beeping machines. The recovery room was dim and quiet, with soft gray light filtering through the blinds. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was or why my entire body felt like I'd been hit by a truck, which I realized groggily I essentially had been. Amber? A gentle voice beside my bed. I turned my head slowly, every movement sending sparks of pain through my neck and shoulders, to see a woman sitting in the visitor's chair. She was maybe 50, with warm brown hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She looked like somebody's mom, but not mine. I'm Margaret Henderson. Robert's wife. Margaret Henderson. The wife of the man who had hit me, who had convinced me to sign for my own surgery, who had probably saved my life. Where? My voice came out as a croak, and she immediately reached for a cup of water with a straw, helping me take a small sip. You're in recovery. The surgery went perfectly. Dr. Martinez said you should make a complete recovery with no lasting damage. She paused, studying my face. Your parents. They came back. They're in the waiting room. My heart clenched. They came back? About an hour after your surgery started. Your mother was, she was beside herself, crying, pacing, asking every nurse and doctor she could find about your condition. Margaret's voice was gentle, non-judgmental. Your father was quieter, but I could see he was worried too. I closed my eyes, trying to process this information. They had come back. After walking away, after leaving me to sign for my own life-saving surgery, they had come back. Have they asked to see me? Margaret hesitated, which was answer enough. They're conflicted. Your mother wants to see you desperately, but your father... She trailed off diplomatically. But my father still thinks I'm dead to him, I finished bitterly. I don't think that's true, Margaret said softly. I think your father is a proud man who said things he can't figure out how to take back. And I think your mother is caught between her love for you and her loyalty to him. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the tiny holes in each square. Anything to avoid thinking about my parents sitting in the waiting room, wrestling with whether their daughter was worth forgiving. Why are you here? I asked. Your husband already did more than enough. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. We have 3 children, she said finally. Our oldest, Jennifer, is 21. When she was 18, she wanted to go to art school in New York. We thought it was a waste of time and money. We wanted her to stay home, go to the local college, study something practical. She paused, smoothing the blanket over my legs with maternal care. We fought about it for months, said terrible things to each other. In the end, she went anyway, and we didn't speak to her for almost a year. What happened? She won a national art competition. Her painting was featured in galleries across the country, and we realized that we had been so busy trying to protect her from failure that we had almost kept her from success. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. We called her that night sobbing, begging for forgiveness. Thank God she was gracious enough to give it to us. So you think my parents will come around? I think your parents love you more than their pride, but sometimes it takes a crisis to make people realize what really matters. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small wrapped package. This is from Robert. He wanted me to give it to you when you woke up. Inside the package was a smartphone, newer and more expensive than anything I'd ever owned. There was a note attached in careful handwriting. So you're never alone in an emergency again. And so you always have a way to call the people who love you, even when you're too stubborn to think they exist. Robert and Margaret Henderson. I stared at the phone, overwhelmed by the kindness of these strangers who had no reason to care about me beyond the guilt of an accident that could have happened to anyone. There's something else, Margaret said gently. We'd like you to come stay with us while you recover. Just until you're back on your feet and ready to return to school. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. We're offering, and frankly, honey, you don't have a lot of other options right now. She was right. My dorm room was a 40-minute drive away, and I'd be alone there with no one to help me if something went wrong. I had acquaintances at Stanford, study partners and lab colleagues, but no one I was close enough to call for help. Sarah had gone home to New York for Thanksgiving and wouldn't be back for a week. Your parents know about our offer, Margaret continued. We spoke to them in the waiting room. Your mother seemed relieved that you'd have somewhere safe to recover. And my father? Your father asked Robert why we were doing this. Robert told him that sometimes strangers become family when family forgets how to love. Margaret's voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear the disapproval beneath it. Your father didn't respond to that. Before I could ask any more questions, there was a soft knock on the door. Dr. Martinez peeked in, followed by a nurse I didn't recognize. "How are you feeling, Amber?" he asked, checking the monitors beside my bed. "Like I got hit by a car," I said, managing a weak smile. "That's to be expected. The surgery went very well. We repaired the damage to your spleen and liver, and your ribs should heal completely within 6 to 8 weeks. You're going to be sore for a while, and you'll need to take it easy, but there's no reason you can't return to school after the Christmas break." School. Stanford felt like a different world now, a place where I had been pretending to be independent and strong while secretly crying myself to sleep every night missing my family. Now I really was alone, cut loose from every anchor I'd ever known. "When can I leave?" I asked. "Tomorrow morning, if everything continues to look good. But you'll need someone to stay with you for at least a week, help you with daily activities while you heal." "She's coming home with us," Margaret said firmly, and the certainty in her voice was somehow both comforting and heartbreaking. A stranger was offering me the care and protection my own parents had withdrawn. After the doctor left, Margaret helped me sit up and sip some broth that tasted like cardboard, but was apparently exactly what my recovering digestive system needed. We talked about small things: her job as a librarian, Robert's work as an insurance adjuster, their 3 children and 4 grandchildren. Normal family conversations that I had taken for granted my entire life and now realized might be lost to me forever. "Margaret," I said as she was getting ready to leave for the night, "do you really think my parents love me? Or are you just being kind?" She sat back down, taking my hand in both of hers. "Honey, I saw your mother's face when she thought she might lose you. That wasn't anger or disappointment or wounded pride. That was a mother's terror at the thought of burying her child." She squeezed my hand gently. "Love doesn't always look the way we want it to. Sometimes it's messy and complicated and tangled up with fear and expectations. But it's still love. Then why won't they see me? Because sometimes love makes people do stupid things. And sometimes it takes time for people to figure out how to untangle the love from all the other emotions wrapped around it." After she left, I lay in the dark hospital room, staring at the new phone in my hands. I scrolled through the contacts. Robert and Margaret's numbers were already programmed in, along with emergency services and the hospital. But there were 3 numbers I wanted to call more than anything in the world, and I wasn't sure I had the right to dial them anymore. Instead, I opened the camera and took a picture of myself, bruised, bandaged, alone in a hospital bed. I looked exactly like what I was, a broken girl who had chosen her dreams over her family and nearly died for it. I started typing a text message to my mother. "I'm alive. I'm sorry. I love you." But I stared at those words for a long time before deleting them, character by character, and putting the phone away. The Henderson house. Margaret and Robert Henderson lived in a cozy 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes from Stanford. It was the kind of house I had always imagined when I thought about the word home. Warm wood floors, bookshelves everywhere, family photos covering the mantel, and the lingering smell of whatever delicious thing Margaret had been cooking. They had set up the guest room downstairs so I wouldn't have to navigate the stairs with my injured ribs. The room was decorated in soft blues and greens, with a comfortable bed, a reading chair by the window, and a small desk where Margaret had placed a vase of fresh flowers. "This was Jennifer's room when she was in high school," Margaret explained as she helped me settle in. "Before she went to art school and broke our hearts by becoming wildly successful." I could see Jennifer in the details that remained. Art books on the shelves, a few sketches still tacked to a bulletin board, postcards from museums around the world. It felt strange to be sleeping in the room of someone I'd never met, someone who had fought the same battle with her parents that I was fighting with mine. "How is she now?" I asked. "Jennifer, I mean. Did things really work out with you and your husband after she left?" Margaret sat on the edge of the bed, her face soft with memory. It took time, and it took us admitting that we were wrong, not just about the art school, but about trying to control her future in the first place. Our job as parents was to love her and support her, not to force her into the life we thought she should have. Do you think my parents will ever realize that? I hope so, honey. For their sake as much as yours. The first few days at the Henderson house passed in a haze of pain medication and sleep. Margaret brought me meals on trays, helped me shower and dress, and sat with me in the afternoons while I dozed in the reading chair by the window. Robert checked on me every evening when he got home from work, asking about my pain levels and whether I needed anything from the pharmacy. They were unfailingly kind, but I could see the guilt in Robert's eyes every time he looked at me. He was trying to atone for the accident by taking care of me, but I could tell that the weight of what had happened was eating at him. It wasn't your fault, I told him one evening as he helped me adjust the pillows on the couch. The police report said I stepped into the street without looking. I was distracted, thinking about school stuff. You couldn't have stopped in time. I was going 5 miles over the speed limit, he said quietly. Maybe if I'd been going slower, maybe if I'd been paying attention, I wouldn't have stepped into traffic in the first place. We can't change what happened, Mr. Henderson. We can only deal with what comes next. He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see something shift in his expression. You're very mature for 19, he said finally. I had to grow up fast. My parents needed me to be responsible, to help with my brother, to be the steady one in the family. I paused, thinking about the irony. I spent so many years being what they needed me to be that when I finally decided to be what I needed to be, they couldn't handle it. What did you need to be? A doctor, I said without hesitation. Someone who helps people. Someone who makes a difference. I've known since I was 12 that I wanted to study medicine. And your parents didn't support that? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. They wanted me to stay home and help my dad with his auto repair shop. They thought medicine was too ambitious, too risky, too far above our family's station. Robert was quiet for a moment. My father wanted me to take over his hardware store, he said finally. I wanted to study engineering. We fought about it for 2 years before I finally just enrolled in college and told him he could either support me or cut me off, but I wasn't spending my life selling screws and paint. What happened? He cut me off. I worked 3 jobs to pay for school, graduated with honors, and got a good job with an engineering firm. It took him 5 years to admit I'd made the right choice. Robert's voice was thoughtful. The difference was I was a man. Society expected me to make my own way in the world. It's harder for daughters, especially daughters from traditional families. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand that your parents' reaction isn't really about you. It's about their fears, about losing you, about you getting hurt, about you outgrowing them. Fear makes people do terrible things, even to the people they love most. That night, lying in Jennifer's old bed, I thought about what Robert had said. Fear. Maybe that's what I had seen in my parents' eyes when I told them about Stanford. Not disappointment or anger, but terror. Terror that they were losing their daughter to a world they didn't understand. A world where they couldn't protect me. But understanding their fear didn't make their abandonment hurt any less. And it didn't change the fact that they had walked away when I needed them most. I picked up the phone Margaret and Robert had given me and scrolled to my mother's number. My finger hovered over the call button for a long time before I set the phone aside. I wasn't ready yet. And maybe they weren't either. The unexpected visitor. On my 4th day at the Henderson house, I was sitting in the living room reading when the doorbell rang. Margaret was at work and Robert was at the office, so I carefully made my way to the front door, moving slowly to avoid jarring my still tender ribs. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar figure standing on the front porch, shifting nervously from foot to foot. My brother Danny, looking younger than his 16 years, clutching something in his hands. I opened the door, and we stared at each other for a moment. He looked exactly the same, shaggy brown hair falling into his eyes, the worried expression he got when he was trying to figure out how to handle a social situation. the gentle soul that shined through despite his developmental challenges. "Danny?" I breathed. "What are you doing here?" "Amber!" He stepped forward like he was going to hug me, then stopped, his eyes taking in the bruises on my face and the careful way I was holding myself. Are you okay? You look hurt." "I am hurt, but I'm getting better. How did you find me?" "I heard Mom and Dad talking about where you were staying. I took the bus." He held up what he was clutching, a Greyhound bus schedule and a crumpled $20 bill. "It took 3 buses and 4 hours, but I found it." My heart clenched. Danny had never traveled anywhere by himself. His autism made it difficult for him to navigate new situations, and my parents were usually overprotective to the point of not letting him go to the corner store alone. "Danny, do Mom and Dad know you're here?" His face fell. "No. They think I'm at my friend Marcus's house. But I had to see you, Amber. I had to make sure you were okay." I stepped aside to let him in, my mind racing. My parents were going to be frantic when they realized Danny wasn't where he was supposed to be. But looking at my little brother's face, seeing the determination and love there, I couldn't bring myself to send him away immediately. "How much trouble are you going to be in?" I asked as he sat carefully on the edge of the couch. "A lot," he said matter-of-factly. "But I don't care. You're my sister. You're hurt, and they won't even talk about you anymore." "They won't talk about me?" Danny shook his head, his expression frustrated. "Every time I ask about you or when you're coming home, Dad gets angry and Mom starts crying. They act like you don't exist anymore. But you do exist. You're my sister, and I miss you." The simple honesty in his voice broke something open in my chest. I sat down beside him, ignoring the pain in my ribs, and pulled him into a gentle hug. He was still my little brother, still the sweet, honest soul who saw the world in black and white, right and wrong, love and loss. "I miss you too," I whispered. "Every day? Then why don't you come home?" The question I'd been asking myself every night for 3 months. "It's complicated, Danny. Because you want to be a doctor?" "Partly. Mom and Dad think being a doctor is bad. They think it's the wrong choice for me. They want me to stay home and help Dad with the garage." Danny was quiet for a moment, processing this. "But you don't like fixing cars." "No, I don't." "And you're really good at science and helping people." "I hope so." "Then Mom and Dad are wrong." He said it with the simple certainty of someone who had never learned to complicate truth with social niceties. "You should be a doctor if that's what you want to be." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," he interrupted, which was unusual for Danny. He rarely interrupted anyone. "You're good at helping people. You helped me with my homework every day. You explained things when I didn't understand. You made me feel smart. That's what doctors do. They help people and make them feel better." I stared at my brother, this sweet, honest soul who could cut through all the emotional manipulation and family drama to the simple truth. I was good at helping people. And that's what I wanted to do with my life. "Danny," I said carefully, "what do you think about me being at Stanford?" "I think it's far away and I miss you. But I think you're brave for going. And I think you're going to be a really good doctor." He paused, then added, "I told Mom and Dad that, but they got mad at me too." "They got mad at you?" "Dad said I don't understand the situation. Mom said I'm too young to have opinions about grown-up things. But I'm not stupid, Amber. I understand that they're scared of losing you, so they pushed you away first. It doesn't make sense, but people do things that don't make sense when they're scared. Out of the mouths of babes." My developmentally disabled little brother had a clearer understanding of the family dynamics than any of us. "I brought you something," Danny said, reaching into his backpack. He pulled out a small photo album, handmade with construction paper and yarn. "I made this for you. Pictures of us. So you don't forget." I opened the album with trembling hands. Every page was filled with photos of Danny and me. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, the day I taught him to ride a bike, the time we built a blanket fort in the living room. In every picture, we were laughing or hugging or just enjoying each other's company. At the bottom of each page, Danny had written captions in his careful, childish handwriting. Amber teaching me fractions, making cookies with my best sister. Amber helping me not be scared of the dark. I don't have any pictures of you at Stanford, he said apologetically. But maybe you can send me some. I want to see where you live and where you go to school. I was crying now, ugly tears that I couldn't stop. Danny, I love you so much. You know that, right? I know, I love you too. That's why I came to see you. He looked at me seriously. Are you going to come home for Christmas? I don't know. Mom and Dad might not want me there. They do want you there. They just don't know how to say it. Mom cries every night. Dad pretends he doesn't, but I can hear him sometimes too. They miss you, Amber. They're just too proud to admit they were wrong. Before I could respond, we heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I could see Margaret's sedan. A moment later, the front door opened and Margaret walked in, stopping short when she saw Danny sitting on her couch. Oh, she said, clearly surprised. You must be Danny. Danny looked between Margaret and me, suddenly uncertain. Are you mad that I'm here? Not mad, Margaret said gently. But I think your parents are probably worried sick about you. Does anyone know where you are? Danny's face fell. No, but I had to see Amber. I had to make sure she was okay. Margaret's expression softened as she took in the photo album in my hands and the obvious love between Danny and me. I understand, sweetheart, but we need to call your parents and let them know you're safe. They're going to be so mad, Danny said, his voice small. They're going to be relieved, Margaret corrected. And then they're going to be mad. But mostly relieved. She was right, of course. We needed to call my parents. But as I looked at Danny's worried face and thought about the conversation that was about to happen, I realized this might be the push my family needed to finally have the confrontation we'd all been avoiding for months. I'll call them, I said, picking up the phone Margaret and Robert had given me. My hands were shaking as I dialed my mother's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times before her familiar voice answered. Hello? Mom, I said, my voice barely a whisper. It's me. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. Then I heard her sharp intake of breath. Amber? Oh my God, Amber, is that really you? Yes, Mom, it's me. And I have Danny here with me. The confrontation. You have what? My mother's voice went from relief to panic in the space of a heartbeat. Danny's supposed to be at Marcus's house. What do you mean you have him? He came to see me, Mom. He took 3 buses by himself to make sure I was okay. 3 buses? By himself? I could hear her calling for my father in the background. Frank! Frank, come here now! There was a rustling sound, and then my father's voice came on the line, cold and distant. Where is Danny? He's here with me, Dad. He's safe. We'll be there in 20 minutes to get him. Dad, wait. But the line was already dead. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding. In 20 minutes, I was going to see my parents for the first time since I'd left for Stanford. The first time since they'd walked out of the hospital and left me to sign for my own surgery. They're coming, I told Danny. His face went pale. Are they really mad? They're scared, I said, echoing his own wisdom back to him. But they love you, so they're coming to get you. Margaret had been listening to the conversation, and now she moved into action with the efficiency of someone who had raised 3 children. Danny, are you hungry? I think we have some sandwich stuff. While Margaret made Danny a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I tried to prepare myself for what was about to happen. I hadn't seen my parents in 3 months. The last time we'd been in the same room, they'd been refusing to sign for my surgery while I lay dying in a hospital bed. What do you say to the people who gave you life and then nearly let you lose it? 18 minutes later, I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Through the window, I could see my parents rushing toward the front door. My mother practically running, my father's face set in grim lines. The doorbell rang, and Margaret went to answer it. I stayed in the living room with Danny, trying to breathe through the anxiety that was making my injured ribs ache even more. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, I heard Margaret say. Please come in. My parents stepped into the Hendersons' living room, and for a moment, we all just stared at each other. My mother looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Her hair was completely gray now, and there were deep lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. My father looked smaller somehow, hunched in on himself like he was carrying a weight too heavy to bear. But it was the look in my mother's eyes when she saw me that nearly broke me. Relief, love, anguish, and something that looked like shame all mixed together. "Danny?" my father said, his voice carefully controlled. "Come here, son." Danny looked between my parents and me, clearly torn. "I'm not done visiting with Amber yet." "You shouldn't have come here without permission," my father said. "Your mother's been worried sick." "I had to make sure she was okay," Danny said, his voice getting stronger. "She's hurt, and she's all alone, and you won't even talk about her. That's not your concern. She's my sister." Danny's voice rose, which was so unlike him that we all stopped and stared. "She's my sister, and I love her, and you're being mean to her." My father's face flushed red. "You don't understand the situation, Danny. I understand that Amber wants to be a doctor, and you want her to fix cars. I understand that she's good at helping people, and you won't let her help people. I understand that you're so mad at her for trying to follow her dreams that you won't even make sure she's okay when she's hurt." The silence that followed was deafening. Danny had just laid out the entire family conflict with the brutal honesty that only he could manage. My mother was the first to break. She took a step toward me, her hand reaching out like she wanted to touch me but wasn't sure she had the right. "Amber," she whispered. How badly were you hurt?" "Broken ribs, internal bleeding, concussion," I said quietly. "I had to have surgery." "Surgery that we should have signed for," she said, her voice cracking. "Surgery that a stranger had to help you get because we—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but we all knew what she meant. "Because they had walked away. Because they had chosen their pride over my life. Margaret and Robert have been taking care of me," I said. They've been the family I needed when I didn't have one." My father flinched like I'd slapped him. "We're your family, are we?" The words came out harder than I intended. Because family doesn't abandon each other in hospitals. Family doesn't cut each other off for following their dreams. Family doesn't let their children nearly die rather than admit they were wrong. "We were trying to protect you," my mother said, tears streaming down her face now. "We were trying to save you from making a mistake that would ruin your life." "By ruining my life for me?" "By keeping you grounded in reality," my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Medicine is a pipe dream for someone like you, Amber. Someone from our background, our economic situation." "Someone like me," I repeated. "You mean someone poor. Someone whose parents work with their hands instead of their minds. Someone who should know her place." "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant." I struggled to my feet, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "You decided that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, worthy enough to be a doctor. You decided that my dreams were too big for someone like me. We decided that we didn't want to watch you fail," my mother said. "We didn't want to watch you get your hopes up only to have them crushed when you realized that the world doesn't work that way for people like us." "People like us," I said. "You keep saying that. But I'm not like you. I'm not content to settle for less than I'm capable of. I'm not willing to let fear make my decisions for me." My father's face hardened. "And look where that got you. Alone in a stranger's house, hurt and abandoned." "I'm not abandoned," I said quietly. "I have people who care about me. People who believe in me. People who didn't walk away when I needed them most." "We didn't walk away." "Yes, you did." My voice was steady now, certain. "When I was lying in that hospital bed, bleeding internally, needing surgery to save my life, you walked away. You literally turned your backs on me and left me to die rather than put your signature on a consent form." My mother was sobbing now, huge, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. "We were scared," she gasped. "We were so scared and we didn't know what to do. We thought if we didn't sign, you'd have to come home. You'd have to give up this crazy idea and come back to us." "You were willing to let me die to prove a point?" "No," she cried. "We never thought. We didn't realize—" "You didn't realize what? That I might actually die?" That I might need you to choose between your pride and my life? My father was staring at his hands, his face gray. We made a mistake, he said quietly. You made a choice, I corrected. You chose to punish me for not being the daughter you wanted me to be. We wanted you to be safe, he said. We wanted you to be close to us, to have a good life, to not get hurt. And instead, you hurt me more than anyone else ever could. Danny, who had been watching this whole exchange with wide eyes, suddenly stood up. Stop it, he said, his voice cutting through the tension. Just stop it. You're all being stupid. We all turned to stare at him. Amber, Mom, and Dad love you. They made bad choices because they were scared, but they love you. Mom cries every night because she misses you. Dad stares at your empty chair at dinner and doesn't eat. They know they were wrong, but they don't know how to fix it. He turned to my parents. And you two need to stop being proud and stubborn. Amber is smart and brave and good at helping people. She's going to be an amazing doctor. You should be proud of her, not mad at her. Then he looked at all of us, his expression serious and determined. We're a family. Families make mistakes, but they forgive each other. They love each other even when they don't understand each other. So stop being scared and stop being proud and just love each other. The truth came from my developmentally disabled little brother, spoken with more wisdom than any of us had shown in months. My mother looked at me, her face streaked with tears. Can you ever forgive us? I looked at her, at my father, at Danny standing between us like a bridge connecting two sides of a chasm. I thought about the months of loneliness, the night I'd nearly died alone, the kindness of strangers who had become family when my real family had failed me. But I also thought about 19 years of love, of bedtime stories and birthday parties and family dinners. I thought about the way my mother had taught me to braid my hair, and the way my father had shown me how to change a tire. I thought about the 1,000 small acts of love that had built the foundation of my life, even if that foundation had cracked under pressure. I can try, I said finally, but things can't go back to the way they were. I'm not coming home. I'm not giving up Stanford. I'm not going to spend my life fixing cars and pretending to be happy about it. I know, my mother whispered. We know. I'm going to be a doctor. With or without your support, I'm going to finish school and go to medical school and spend my life helping people. That's who I am, and you have to accept that if you want to be part of my life. My father looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than disappointment in his eyes. Are you sure that's what you want? Being a doctor, it's hard. It takes so long, costs so much money. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. He nodded slowly. Then I guess we need to figure out how to help you get there. The words hung in the air between us, fragile and uncertain, but real. It wasn't forgiveness yet, wasn't the happy reunion I'd dreamed about. But it was a beginning. It was the first step toward rebuilding what had been broken. But even as my family stood there, taking tentative steps toward reconciliation, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something else coming. Some other challenge or revelation that would test whether this fragile piece could survive. I had no idea how right I was. That something else came 3 days later, just as I was starting to believe that maybe, possibly, my family could find a way back to each other. I was sitting in the Hendersons' kitchen, having breakfast with Margaret and slowly working through some makeup assignments my professors had sent, when my phone rang. It was my mother, and her voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Amber, honey, I need you to come home. Right now, my blood went cold. What's wrong? Is it Danny? It's your father, her voice cracked. He had a heart attack this morning. He's in the hospital and the doctors, they're saying it's serious. The world tilted sideways. My father, stubborn, proud, impossible Frank Collins, was lying in a hospital bed fighting for his life. The same man who had walked out of my hospital room was now the one who needed saving. How serious? I asked, already mentally calculating how long it would take to get home. Very serious. They're talking about surgery, about complications. She was crying now, trying to hold it together but failing. Amber, I know we have a lot to work through still, but he's asking for you. He keeps saying your name. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of irony crushing down on me. My father, who had refused to sign for my life-saving surgery, was now asking for me to come to his bedside while he faced his own. "I'll be there as soon as I can," I said. Margaret, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, was already reaching for her car keys. "I'll drive you," she said without hesitation. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." "You're still recovering. You can't drive that distance alone, and you shouldn't have to face this by yourself." As we drove the 4 hours back to Ohio, I found myself thinking about the last real conversation I'd had with my father. Not the confrontation 3 days ago, but the night before I left for Stanford. We had both been stubborn, both been hurt, both been too proud to bend. "You're throwing your life away," he had said, standing in the doorway of my childhood bedroom as I packed my bags. "I'm building my life," I had replied, not looking at him because I knew if I saw his face, I might lose my resolve. Building it on what? Dreams? Hope? That's not a foundation, Amber, that's quicksand. I had turned to face him then. This man who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and worked double shifts so I could have school supplies. "Maybe your dreams were quicksand, Dad, but mine aren't." It was cruel, and I had regretted it the moment the words left my mouth. But he had already turned away, his shoulders rigid with hurt and anger. Now, speeding down the highway toward home, I wondered if those might be the last words we ever exchanged. Coming home, the hospital in my hometown was nothing like Stanford Medical Center. It was smaller, older, with that distinctive smell of disinfectant and floor wax that I remembered from childhood visits to see various relatives. The cardiac ICU was on the 3rd floor, and as Margaret and I rode the elevator up, I tried to prepare myself for what I might find. My mother was sitting in the waiting room, looking like a ghost of herself. She was wearing the same clothes she'd had on 3 days ago at the Henderson house, and her hair was disheveled like she'd been running her hands through it. Danny was beside her, holding her hand and looking scared. When she saw me, she stood up so fast she nearly fell over. "Amber? Oh, thank God you're here." We hugged and I could feel how thin she'd gotten, how fragile she felt in my arms. "How is he?" "Not good. The doctors say he had what they call a massive heart attack. There's damage to his heart muscle, and his blood pressure is unstable." She pulled back to look at me, and I could see the fear in her eyes. "They're not sure. They can't promise." She couldn't say the words, but I understood. They couldn't promise he would survive. "Can I see him?" "Yes, but Amber, he looks bad. Really bad. All the machines and tubes." She trailed off, trying to prepare me. I had seen plenty of patients in the ICU during my volunteer work at Stanford. I thought I was ready, but nothing could have prepared me for seeing my father, this man who had always seemed so strong, so unmovable, lying small and pale in a hospital bed, connected to more machines than I could count. His eyes were closed, but they fluttered open when I sat down beside his bed. For a moment, he looked confused, like he couldn't quite place me. Then recognition dawned, followed immediately by something that looked like shame. "Amber," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the beeping of the monitors. "You came." "Of course I came, Dad. Even after what we did to you?" I reached for his hand, careful of the IV lines. His skin was cold and papery, nothing like the strong hands that had taught me to use tools and fix broken things. "Dad, don't. Just rest. Save your strength." But he shook his head slightly, his eyes intense despite his weakness. "No, I need to tell you something." He paused, breathing heavily with the effort of speaking. "I was wrong. About Stanford, about your dreams, about everything. I was so scared of losing you that I lost you anyway. Dad, let me finish." His grip on my hand tightened slightly. "That night in the hospital when you needed surgery, I was terrified. Not just of the surgery, but of what it meant. If we signed those papers, if we gave our permission, it meant we were admitting that you were really grown up. Really independent. Really not our little girl anymore." Tears were streaming down my face now. "But I am still your little girl. I'll always be your daughter no matter how old I get or how far I go. I know that now. But then I just saw you slipping away from us and I panicked. I thought if we didn't sign, you'd have to come home. You'd have to need us. His voice broke. I never imagined that you might actually. I know, Dad. I know. Can you forgive a stubborn old fool? I leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. There's nothing to forgive. We all made mistakes. I'm proud of you, he whispered. I should have said it sooner, but I'm proud of you. For getting into Stanford, for chasing your dreams, for being brave enough to become who you're meant to be. Dad, you're going to be fine. You're going to get better, and we're going to have years to talk about this. But even as I said the words, I could see the truth in his eyes. He knew, the way patients sometimes know, that this might be goodbye. Promise me something, he said. Anything. Promise me you'll become a doctor. Promise me you won't let anything, not money, not fear, not even losing me, stop you from helping people the way you want to help them. I promise. And promise me you'll take care of your mother and Danny. They're going to need you. Dad, don't talk like that. Promise me, Amber. I promise. He smiled then, the first real smile I'd seen from him in months. Good, that's good. His eyes drifted closed, and for a moment I thought he had fallen asleep. But then he opened them again, looking directly at me. I love you, sweetheart. I've always loved you, even when I was too proud and scared to show it right. I love you too, Dad. Those were the last words we exchanged. He slipped into unconsciousness an hour later, and despite the doctor's best efforts, he never woke up again. My father died at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, while I held his hand and my mother sat on his other side, whispering about all the things they were going to do together when he got better. The aftermath. The days after my father's death passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, casseroles from neighbors, and the strange, hollow feeling that comes when someone who was such a big part of your life is suddenly just gone. I stayed home for 2 weeks, helping my mother navigate the paperwork and the grief, making sure Danny understood what had happened, and trying to figure out how to move forward as a family that was now missing its cornerstone. Margaret and Robert came to the funeral, along with their daughter Jennifer, the artist who had fought her own battle for independence and won. Jennifer was beautiful and confident, with paint under her fingernails and the kind of easy smile that comes from knowing who you are and being comfortable with it. Your father would be proud of what you're becoming, she told me after the service. It takes courage to choose your own path, especially when the people you love don't understand it at first. Did you ever regret it? I asked. Going to art school, fighting with your parents? Never, not for a single day. The relationships can be repaired, I'm proof of that. But if you give up on your dreams to make other people comfortable, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. After the funeral, when the casseroles had been eaten and the flowers had started to wilt, my mother and I finally had the conversation we'd been avoiding. I have to go back to Stanford, I said. We were sitting in the kitchen, the same kitchen where this whole nightmare had started with my acceptance letter. She nodded, not looking up from the cup of coffee she'd been stirring for 10 minutes. I know. And I have to finish my degree, go to medical school, become a doctor. I know that too. But I also need to know that you and Danny are going to be okay. That you have support, that you're not going to struggle financially. She looked up at me then, and I was surprised to see something that looked almost like amusement in her eyes. Amber, sweetheart, we're not as helpless as you think we are. I know, but your father left us well provided for. He had good life insurance through the factory, and the house is almost paid off. Danny has his disability benefits and his therapy team. I'm thinking about going back to work, maybe at the library or the school district. She reached across the table and took my hand. We're going to be fine. And you need to stop trying to save everyone else and focus on saving yourself. What do you mean? I mean you've been taking care of everyone else. Me, your father, Danny, the family, since you were 12 years old. You've been so busy being responsible and reliable that you almost forgot to be young and ambitious and selfish the way 19-year-olds are supposed to be. I stared at her. This was not the conversation I had expected. Your father and I, we leaned on you too much. We made you the adult in the family when we should have been handling our own problems. And when you finally decided to put yourself first, to chase your own dreams, we punished you for it because we were scared of having to be adults ourselves. Mom? No, let me finish. You're going back to Stanford, and you're going to become a doctor, and you're not going to spend one more minute worrying about whether we approve or whether we can handle life without you. Because we can, and we will, and we should have been doing it all along. I was crying again, but this time they were tears of relief rather than grief. Are you sure? I'm sure. And Amber? Your father was right about one thing. We are proud of you. We've always been proud of you. We just didn't know how to show it when we were so scared of losing you. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my dorm room at Stanford, where I'm finishing up my sophomore year with a 3.9 GPA and early acceptance to Stanford Medical School. It's late at night, and I should be studying for my organic chemistry final, but I needed to finish this story first. My mother calls me every Sunday, and our conversations are easier now. She tells me about her new job at the library, about Danny's progress in his life skills classes, about the small dramas and joys of everyday life in our small Ohio town. I tell her about my classes, my research project, my plans for medical school. Danny visits me for a week every summer, and he loves the Stanford campus. He's decided he wants to go to college too, something that would have terrified my parents 6 months ago, but that my mother now encourages with fierce determination. Margaret and Robert Henderson have become like second parents to me. I spend holidays with them when I can't make it home, and their house feels like a safe harbor whenever I need one. Robert still struggles with guilt over the accident, but he's channeling it into something positive. He's started a scholarship fund for first-generation college students who want to study medicine. The stranger who stepped in when my own parents couldn't has become family in the truest sense of the word. But the real gift my father gave me wasn't his blessing or his pride, though those meant everything to me. The real gift was teaching me that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it looks like fear. Sometimes it looks like letting go when you want to hold on. Sometimes it looks like admitting you were wrong when you've spent months being right. My father was terrified that I would outgrow him, that I would become someone he couldn't understand or relate to. What he didn't understand was that the values he taught me, compassion, determination, the importance of helping others, were exactly what made me want to become a doctor in the first place. I'm still his daughter. I'll always be his daughter. But now I'm also becoming the woman he raised me to be, even if it took him a while to recognize her. To everyone watching this who's struggling with family expectations, who's choosing between their dreams and their loved ones' fears, let me tell you something, you don't have to choose. Love is stronger than fear, but sometimes it takes time for the people who love you to remember that. Sometimes strangers become family when family forgets how to love. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, family remembers how to love just in time. My name is Amber Collins, and I'm going to be a doctor. Not because my parents finally gave me permission, but because I gave myself permission to become who I was always meant to be. And Dad? Wherever you are, I hope you're proud, because I kept my promise. I'm going to help people just like you taught me to. I'm just going to do it with a stethoscope instead of a wrench. Epilogue. 2 years later, I'm writing this update from my first day of medical school rotations. I'm exhausted, exhilarated, and more certain than ever that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. My mother remarried last month, a kind widower she met at the library who makes her laugh and treats Danny like his own son. At the wedding, she pulled me aside and said, "Your father would have loved Tom, and he would have been so proud to see you in your white coat." Danny graduated high school with honors and is starting community college in the fall, studying to become a special education teacher. He says he wants to help kids like himself realize they're capable of more than anyone expects. Robert Henderson walked me down the aisle at my medical school white coat ceremony, standing in for the father who couldn't be there but whose influence shaped every step of my journey. And sometimes, late at night when I'm studying in the hospital library, I swear I can feel my father's presence, not disappointed or afraid, but proud. Finally, completely proud of the daughter who chose her dreams and found a way to honor both her ambitions and her family's love. Some stories don't have happy endings, but some stories have beginnings disguised as endings, and sometimes the greatest tragedy becomes the foundation for the greatest triumph. This is mine. Thank you for watching my story. If it touched you, if it made you think about your own family or your own dreams, please let me know in the comments. And remember, sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who have the hardest time letting us grow. But love always finds a way, even when it seems impossible. Like this video if it moved you, subscribe for more real stories about family, love, and the courage to chase your dreams, and share it with someone who needs to know that they're not alone in their struggles. Until next time, remember, you are worthy of your dreams, even when the people you love most are too scared to see it. Much love, Amber.